Hello, everyone. I'm Shanna Groves with the Definitely Talking podcast and also lipreadingmom.com. Here to welcome our special guest today, Carly Sygrove. Carly is actually the inspiration behind the Definitely Talking podcast. A few months ago, I was invited as a guest on her podcast, which she will speak about later. And she had so many great questions for me. I enjoyed the experience thoroughly. So, this is why we are here today. Carly is a hearing loss coach, advocate, and writer. She has a background in education. In 2016, Carly experienced profound, sudden hearing loss in her left ear, and she received a cochlear implant in 2024. She is a hearing loss coach, and she supports individuals in achieving their goals and living confidently with hearing loss. She shares her personal journey in her blog called My Hearing Loss Story. She also founded the Sudden Hearing Loss Support website, and she provides resources for those affected by sudden hearing loss, as well as general hearing loss. Also, she has a book that I'm very excited she's going to be talking about today as a co-author of Sudden Hearing Loss, Stories of Hope, Guidance, and Support, offering personal stories and practical guidance for those affected by sudden hearing loss. Welcome, Carly.
Hi, Shanna. That was a bit of a mouthful there, wasn't it? Thank you for that introduction.
Oh, it was great. It was great. Carly, again, I have to thank you for being the inspiration behind Definitely Talking. And also, you have a new book out. I'm really thrilled to learn more about that. But can you tell me more about your hearing loss background and maybe how it ties into your podcast and your new book?
Okay, right. Yeah, so around 9 years ago, I had something called a sudden sensory neural hearing loss in my left ear. So I now, as you can see, I've got my cochlear implant now, but it happened all of a sudden in a moment. Now, sudden hearing loss can happen, like with me, very instantaneously, and it can also happen over about 72 hours. I think before I continue, I just want to say to your audience that if you do notice any sudden change in your hearing, it's a medical emergency and you should seek immediate medical attention because the sooner you get treatment, the better your chances are of recovering some hearing. Now, when I had my hearing loss, I didn't know this. I didn't know it was an emergency. I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know you could suddenly lose your hearing. So I didn't seek attention immediately. I left it around a week before I saw a GP, so my family doctor. And I know, Shanna, that you used to be a teacher. So when I had my hearing loss, I was a teacher at the time, and it was the start of a new school year. And I just felt like I didn't have time to be ill. So I was welcoming new parents, welcoming new children to my class, setting up the classroom, getting the routines in place. And I just thought, oh, this is just something that will clear up on its own. It'll get better. Now, at the time of my hearing loss, I had tinnitus. So I had all of a sudden had this screeching sound in my head. I had vertigo in the beginning. So, like, I look back on that time and think, I don't know how I did it. But I continued. I didn't seek medical attention immediately. And then actually, when I did see my doctor, she looked in my ears and she said, actually, everything looks fine. Maybe it's just some inflammation. She didn't give me a hearing test. She didn't refer me. And she just told me to take some ibuprofen to see if I felt better. And told me to come back in a week if things weren't any better. And this is after I told her, look, I can't hear anything at all in my left ear. My story is not unique. So this I've connected with many people over the years, and this happens a lot. There's not enough known about sudden hearing loss, not just amongst the general public, but by healthcare specialists as well. So anyway, so this happened to me, and I eventually did receive treatment, but by that time it was outside of the optimal window of up to about 2 weeks usually. that's recommended. So I received the treatment very late, and I didn't recover any hearing. So that's kind of my background. So since then, I've been living with single-sided deafness. I tried a cross hearing aid, which sent the sound from the deaf side via Bluetooth to the hearing side, which sounds amazing. And, for some people, it is amazing. For me, not so much. My hearing ear felt overwhelmed with all the sound that it was getting from the deaf side. So that for me wasn't my treatment option. My treatment option, as you mentioned, Shanna, was my cochlear implant, which I received. It's about a year ago, so I just had the anniversary of, I think it was last week, of when I had the surgery, and I wasn't activated. The implant wasn't activated until December 18th of last year. So I'm coming up for the activation anniversary as well. So lots to celebrate. Yeah, so that's my story. And so how all this connects to the book. Um, there's so much to talk about here.
Yeah.
I've connected.
I was just going to come up with a thought here,
Yeah.
and you mentioned sudden hearing loss, and a lot of
Mhm.
people, when they think about hearing loss, they think about something that you acquire over time or something that you're born with. But to lose something suddenly that you had maybe the night before or 2 weeks before and it be gone,
Yeah.
that sense of loss. Do you talk about that in your book?
Yeah, it's one of the main things we talk about. I think it's one of the main things I wanted to include in the book. And I think the book in general, it's a support resource. So it has that support, it has that emotional support and that emotional aspect to it. I think yeah, what we've managed to capture in the book, it kind of highlights my own experience and many experiences of people that we spoke to as well when writing this book. We connected with about 60 people worldwide who talked to us about their hearing loss. And over the years as well, I've connected with many people as well going through this. So the book talks about that emotional impact of hearing loss as a whole and also of sudden hearing loss. Now, as someone who's had sudden hearing loss, I think it's quite unique in certain ways in terms of that emotional impact. Because for me, there was an initial shock because I didn't know it could happen. I didn't, when I was told that when I was given a diagnosis finally, there was that shock. There was like, how on earth could this happen? I was healthy. I'd never even had an ear infection and I had perfect hearing. I prided myself on it. That was the good, like my superpower. It was like really good hearing. I could hear all the children in my class, even when they were like being really cheeky or quiet. And all of a sudden it had gone. So there's that shock that this could actually happen. And then later it comes that sadness, that frustration. And I remember there was a lady online that I connected with who she was living with like gradual hearing loss, like you were talking about. And she said to me, look, you might actually realize, you might find that you might need to grieve for your hearing that you've lost. And this really has stuck with me ever since. I've written about it, I've talked about it. I termed it hearing loss grief, and it seems to be a term that's used quite a lot actually. Um, and there was that feeling of obviously sadness, but then working through those emotions that come with it. So, I was so sad. I was so frustrated at just trying to figure out how to live with hearing loss after never even considering it. Quite naively, and I actually had no awareness, thought that it was just for people with, who are old. I didn't really think about any other reason for hearing loss. So yeah, it was a real loss, and I did need to grieve. And we've covered this in the book. We've got chapters on the grief that comes with it. We've got chapters on dealing with anxiety that comes just with living with hearing loss, and being in difficult listening situations, or even just the thought of that. We've talked about all these kind of emotional impacts and the aspects of hearing loss, and it was really important that we did that so that anyone going through sudden hearing loss or their family or their friends can actually understand, this isn't just losing hearing. This is it's losing a part of yourself, a part of yourself that's really can really
Mhm.
be important in interacting with the world.
Mm. And that's interesting that you bring that up. Having hearing as a child, an adult,
Hmm.
and then acquiring sudden deafness.
Hmm.
It's something that your brain, I'm sure, had to adjust to.
Hmm.
I have friends who were born profoundly hard of hearing, so they don't consider themselves having hearing loss because they didn't lose it. It was already gone
Hmm.
at birth. And so their adjustment and their grief, if you will, to hearing loss can be very different. They grew up with it. That's all they
Hmm.
know. In our situation, mine was gradual. It was not sudden. I did also, like you, deal with those stages of grief. And I think it's very important that we process those stages of grief and allow ourselves to feel those emotions because, like you said, losing a part of yourself,
Hmm.
especially if you're in an industry or a career where you have to communicate and you have
Hmm.
to listen, especially children. Because
Yeah,
as you know, we
definitely.
both have taught small children. It's not easy in a crowded room with bad acoustics and we can't hear clearly.
Hmm.
Plus, we might have a device that amplifies everything that we hear, but that can distort what we hear, and we can't distinguish one voice from the other, or even sometimes single words that one person is speaking. We are, as you know, at the end of 2025, and you
Hmm.
mentioned that you're right at 1 year with having a cochlear implant. And in 2026, it will be 10-year anniversary, if you want to call it that,
Hmm.
of having a sudden single-sided deafness.
Hmm.
What are some things that you can reflect upon from this year that you have learned in your journey with your hearing loss? And what are some goals or some ideas that you have for yourself
Hmm.
for this new year?
Good question.
Do you have them? And if not, we can we can
So
we can change that around.
I can definitely reflect. So this year has been full of emotion and it has been equal parts absolutely amazing and exciting and equal with exhausting. So I'm sure you understand, Shanna, when I say that learning to hear is just takes a lot of energy. And so I have loved every moment with my cochlear implant so far. I can see a future with like hearing even better, doing, getting so much more enjoyment out of having stereo hearing. I just feel so lucky from having it. So my reflections really are I have worked so hard this year. I do listening exercises every single day. I watch podcasts, I listen to music. I'm trying to enjoy music again through the implant. I'm doing a whole sorts. Now got an audio book finally, so I'm doing that. I'm doing different applications every single day. I've been working. So I look back on this. Actually, my one of my resolutions last year was learn to hear again through the implant. And I've done that. And, it's not going to be the end because it's continuous, obviously. We're continuously learning. I'm not at my peak yet. I still think after a year of activation, I'm still not at my peak. There's further to go. I want to hear better in background noise. I want to get more out of music. I'm enjoying it, but it's getting so much better right now. So I think it's going to continue. I just want to continue enjoying sound, walking outside and just hearing the sounds of nature on both sides. It means so much. And I just feel so lucky and grateful for that. So yeah, a year of hard work, but definitely rewards from that in terms of hearing.
That is such a great perspective. I know that my journey with having a cochlear implant is newer than yours. I received my cochlear implant mid-year 2025, and yours is so you have a few months on me with this journey. But I tell you, I have learned so much from reading your blog that you post even prior to your cochlear implant surgery. You were posting about your experiences and some of the things that you enjoy doing, such as hiking, walking, things like that, that you have to be careful about your environment if you're not able to hear clearly. There are certain sounds that we need to know for safety. Sometimes, too, having hearing loss, I know my experience, it impacts my balance. So I have to be very careful when I'm going in elevations and walking that I don't trip. Have
Mhm.
you noticed any changes since you received the cochlear implant in your ability to understand situational sounds, environmental sounds, and also with your balance?
Mhm. Definitely with environmental sounds, I'm much more aware of where sound is coming from, which with single-sided deafness, you have no idea where sound is coming from. So now I'm more aware. So if I'm walking and there's a loud noise, I generally know where that noise has come from. I know where to look to see if there's some danger there. If there's an amazing sound, like a beautiful sounding bird, I generally can know where it's coming from to see if I can, see it. So I've noticed definitely feeling more comfortable. I think it is the best way of saying it. Feeling more comfortable, feeling more safe in my environment, and yeah, yeah. I think with balance, I have balance issues as well. So I have vestibular migraine and Meniere's disease, which means that I am often unbalanced. I haven't noticed a change with the cochlear implant for those things, but in terms of just everyday awareness, definitely.
We definitely need to watch where we walk.
Yes.
And some activities too. Like I have to really be careful running on a treadmill. I could easily get dizzy and trip and fall and get injured.
Mhm.
I'm sure you
Mhm.
can relate
Yeah.
to what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's scary.
Mhm.
And so that is that is great that you are in tune with what you can hear. And like you said, the direction of sound, where sounds are coming from. With single
Mhm.
sided deafness, you have to be more aware of what what you're seeing and
Mhm.
seeing where those sounds originate too.
Mhm. 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 So it's
Okay.
not just
Yeah. Go
sorry,
ahead. Go
sorry,
ahead.
Shanna. It's not just the hearing, it's that feeling safe and comfortable as well that comes with having, some awareness of sound on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it has made a world of difference. And you said you do some auditory training on your own,
Mhm.
meaning for people who aren't familiar with that, it is relearning how to hear with a cochlear implant device. It is not the same as hearing with a hearing aid or natural hearing because there are some sounds with a cochlear implant, at least from my experience. I have not heard these sounds in years. And now I'm able to hear the sounds of whole words, and they're not just a bunch of garbly goop, if you
Mhm.
will.
Mhm. I I love how I can see in your face how much, your cochlear implant has changed your life as well. And it's nice connecting with other people who just understand that feeling.
I do. I do appreciate it and know that there's other people out there who are on the same journey. Not always the same situations, not
Hmm.
always the same success with
Hmm.
a cochlear implant, but we do understand that adjustment period.
Hmm.
It can take a while for our brains
Definitely.
to reacclimate to sounds. All right. Fun question that we end all podcasts with, Carly. But before I ask that question, I just want to note for our audience, you have a beautiful accent. And can you tell us where you live now and where you are originally from?
I'm hoping that your listeners or watchers can actually understand me okay, but I know you always have captions.
Mhm.
And so I'm originally from the UK. I'm from the north of England, and I currently live in Spain on the east coast.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we are several hours time difference. I'm afternoon, you are nighttime. I know
Hmm.
that we've talked before, and it's very early morning dark outside for me,
Hmm.
and it's bright sunny outside for you. And so I appreciate your flexibility also in meeting with me and these unusual time zone differences.
No problem.
Okay. The last question of each podcast is, what is your superpower, Carly? And that could be a skill, a strength, something we haven't talked about that you believe you are good at and that you enjoy doing.
Okay, so I knew you were going to ask this, Shanna, because I've watched your other podcasts. So I was racking my brain. I was like, what is my superpower? So I asked my partner because I had a few ideas and I thought, let's see what he says. And he said immediately, my ability to stay calm in any situation. He said, because he is not a calm person always. He does sometimes get a bit stressed. And he just said that I have this ability to remain calm. And he thinks it comes from me being a teacher, teaching very young children, and being around absolute chaos for much of much of my working life. Some of the, some of the accidents and some of the crazy situations that 3 and 4 year olds can get themselves into does mean that you need to remain calm. And he thinks it probably stems from that, or at least that profession has helped me with staying calm.
That's unbelievable that you say that because that is a skill that is, I know, was very helpful to me as well as a teacher, that you're managing a classroom of several young bodies with all different kinds of personalities
Hmm.
and activity levels.
Yes, activity levels. That's a
And
good
you're
way of
one adult
phrasing it.
versus umpteen little human beings.
Exactly, exactly.
Carly, I have enjoyed this so much. And again, thank you. Thank you, Carly, for being the inspiration behind this podcast and for being a special guest for me today to close out 2025. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise and I really wish you the very best in the new year.
Thank you so much for having me on, Shanna. Congratulations on this wonderful podcast. I'm really enjoying it. And Happy New Year to all of your listeners and viewers. And I hope it's a good one.
Thank you, Carly. To all of our viewers and listeners of the Definitely Talking podcast, have a great rest of your day and take care.